Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, students, how are you? Semoga selalu sehat ya. Jangan lupa bahagia juga. Oke, so di pertemuan kali ini saya akan menjelaskan tentang M-learning. Dan so it's actually another level of the use of ICT in language learning, and I put it after gamification because it's actually has a close relation to gamification. So how could it relate? So let's check out. The definition of M-learning can be seen from this by looking at this picture. So here you can see a variety of people's activity that can be catered by using smartphone. And interestingly, you can see the books, piles of books, scholarly books in the gadget. So another example is uh, another example is when you're looking at this cartoon. So in this picture, the teacher is actually in front of his audience, his students, but he tried to text them by saying, "Isn't it this great? Text me your homework, thanks." I don't think that this is a proper example of M learning, but this is how the M learning could happen. So it's actually the transformation from the old school to the new school, in which in the old school we know that people will mostly rely on information in the book, but in the new school, people will have a lot of sources to gain information and to validate them in a more responsible way. So M-learning stands for mobile learning. Mobile learning is the delivery of learning content to learners utilizing mobile computing devices. Jadi ketika kita belajar dengan menggunakan mobile computing devices, so it's actually what mobile learning is. The next question is, why do learners want to learn on the mobile? There are four reasons according to research. And the first reason says that 2/3 of the learners are already on smartphone. Jadi kita bisa tahu that bahwa most of the learners, they had mobile phone. But we cannot really neglect that the fact in Indonesian context, some learners, they don't have the access for mobile phone. But in general, when we talk about majority, we can say that the 2/3 of the learners, they had the smartphone. The second one is the second reason focuses more on the flexibility because they can access anywhere. And number 3, the learning take place without the hassles of preamble to start learning. So they can learn anywhere, anytime. The last reason is because the learning is more contextual and heuristic because they are on the move. It can be contextual because they can refer to the things happening in their places, and it could be heuristic because they can learn something by themselves. They don't need to have a formal institution to support them. So heuristic in simple way, we can say otodidak dalam bahasa Indonesia. In this slide, you can see the 10 advantages of mobile learning. So you can read yourself, but there are 2 points that I would like to highlight. The first one is fosters the BYOD. BYOD stands for bring your own device. Jadi ada beberapa kelas mungkin yang memang diwajibkan untuk anak-anaknya membawa mobile device because it's part of the learning process. And by 2020, 45% of all businesses will switch to BYOD policy. So there's a growing trend of using mobile learning as the corporate training. And in this corporate training, usually people will learn something in their spare time. So to support this, they need to have their own device. The second one is to cater the millennial workforce. We know that you are millennials and most of you prefer to learn in smartphone. I said most of you because I know that some of you also prefer to have the online, the offline. In terms of the tools, there are some variety of tools that you can have to involve in mobile learning. Mobile phones, smartphones, game consoles, laptop, tablets are some of them. Interestingly, PDAs, do you know this? Kayaknya jarang deh yang tahu. Perhaps your parent had this before, but yeah, it's no longer exists. I don't know whether it still exists or not. Now, I'd like to talk about the four types of mobile learning. The first one is information access. So when you access information in the modes of videos, documents, images, so it's part of mobile learning. So looking at presentation, my presentation, for example, and then videos, podcasts, images, documents, ebooks. So this is actually part of mobile learning. The second type is the learning itself. Some activities are micro learning. So I will keep it for the next week because this is what we will focus on. Quizzes, assessments, games, simulations, space practice are some examples. The third type is communication, in which the students can communicate with other people and is part of the learning. So social networking, when you text someone using English, for example, so it's part of the learning. So you can connect that to your real life. Conferencing, joining the webinar, observing not only the content but also the language features that used in the webinar. So it's very interesting. The use of email, SMS, text, and so it's actually part of communication. Lastly, performance support. Some activities are job aids, checklists, reminders, augmented reality, procedure guides. For another example in your context, perhaps is Grammarly, because you get aid from Grammarly to check your grammar in your document, and it support your performance, your writing performance in this case. So those are the types of mobile learning. So next, I'd like to talk about mobile learning principles. Jadi bisa dilihat dari sini ada real world application, affordances of mobile, sampai di mobility. So this work is done by Harrington with his friends in 2009, who constructed the design principle for mobile learning in their research. So the first one is real world relevance. You need to use the mobile learning in authentic context. Jadi when you talk about English, then it needs to be clear English. It doesn't have to be British or even Australian or American English. It needs to be authentic in a way that you can have Singaporean English if you like, and that is actually what authentic learning is. You can introduce to your students that this is how the Singlish sounds like, and etc. Mobile context means that the use of mobile learning in context when the learners are mobile. So, for example, when I ask you to create games or quizzes like in the previous meeting, I want you to connect and use the Indonesian context from the names and from the way of thinking and etc. So it's actually what mobile context principle is. Number three, explore, which means you need to provide time for exploration for the mobile technologies. Jadi ketika kalian memberikan a lesson, you need to make sure that the students are given time to explore. Blended means that we can blend mobile and non-mobile technologies. Jadi bisa dicampur antara the use of smartphone and also the use of non-mobile technologies. Technologies itu kan banyak juga ya. So you can explore a lot of things. Wherever you can use, whenever, anytime, wherever, focus more on in anywhere, both individually or collaboratively. Whomsoever you can use that both individually or collaboratively. Okay, affordances of mobile technologies. Jadi pastikan bahwa teknologi yang kalian gunakan itu tetap affordable. Personalize, employ the learners on mobile device. Jadi tiap orang punya akses tertentu, and that's why username is important. The 10th principle is mediation, in which we use mobile learning to mediate knowledge construction. Jadi pastikan bahwa ketika kita menggunakan mobile learning, tujuan utamanya adalah bagaimana membuat siswa itu bisa menambah pengetahuannya dan pemahamannya itu benar-benar maksimal. So we use the technology, we use the mobile devices to create or construct the knowledge. The last principle is produce. The use mobile learning to produce and consume knowledge. Not only to consume, but also to produce. Produce knowledge means that you create something from the things that you had known before. So contohnya kalau kemarin aku udah ngasih tahu konsep tentang gamification, and then the next thing that you need to do was creating yourself the quizzes. Okay. In this slide, I'd like to talk about the mobile learning trends nowadays. The first one is BYOD. Jadi seperti yang tadi saya sudah sampaikan, bring your own device not only take place in companies for the corporate training, but also in some classes. Jadi ada beberapa teacher yang mungkin meminta mahasiswanya atau siswanya untuk membawa laptop atau mungkin smartphone. The second trend is gamification. Jadi udah bisa membuat pembelajaran itu lebih seru lagi. Number 3 is CAN API, which is the latest standard for learning technology. I will not talk much because it's actually more complicated, so I just want to skip it. Number 4 is snack learning, which is also known as bite-sized learning. Nah, ini snack learning itu bukan belajar bikin snack, no. So this is another term for micro learning. Then I will keep this for the next meeting. Don't worry. Number 5 is location-based learning, which enhance mobile learning activity by allowing learners to access learning materials anytime, anywhere. They are highly engaged with the course content, which is relevant to their location. Jadi ketika kita memang menggunakan location-based learning, itu bisa dimaksimalkan. So for example, kita bisa minta anak-anak untuk mengaktifkan GPS, and then they can take pictures from their mobile phone and try to compare with the Google Map in that specific location with how are things changed from the Google Earth or Google Map picture and also in the reality. So it's going to be very interesting. Next is the use of videos. So there's a high tendency of people to watch videos for their spare time, and another people will gain more advantage by creating them because they produce the videos that not only educational but also meaningful for the others. Here, I would like to explain about 21st century mobile social learning. Jadi ketika kita punya mobile learning, jadi bisa melihat dari sisi yang lebih besar. So here we can see that the teacher tried to transfer the knowledge using applications in the mobile learning. And usually the teacher will have video content, and of course the teacher need to have the skills to have the video transferred to the students, and here the students can process the information. And after the processing the information, they can either have the big thinking, so they can construct the knowledge they had, or they can have creative thinking, so they can think of alternatives, they can think of ideas that outside of the box. So it's very interesting. And these learners also need to engage themselves in independent or teamwork, in projects, research, forums, blogs, or even sharing in discussions. And at the same time, the experts can connect to the learners with the world by having mobile learning. This the world the world that we had is actually somehow available in Google. How could that be? Because we can just type anything from Google and they can find anything, right? So this application, the Google, is usually accessed by the student. And here, when the Google find any information, it tried to connect the world with the experts and also the learners. So here is how complicated 21st century mobile social learning is. Okay. Nah, sekarang gimana ya strateginya untuk develop M-learning course? Jadi yang pertama adalah instructional design strategy. Jadi kita harus tahu targetnya siapa aja. And then setelah tahu, we need to create the visual design strategy. We need to access the information, and then we need to think of ukurannya kayak apa, apakah harus bisa diakses dengan laptop aja, atau mungkin smartphone, anything. Next is audio strategy, di mana kita harus memikirkan the best use of audio that offered to the students. Next is multimedia strategy that can be used in form of games, quizzes, animations, videos in the M-learning course. The next stage is assessment. Here we can have quizzes to have interesting assessment, or you can have like the old-fashioned assessment, like a real test like. Lastly, we need to think of the technical strategy, in which we need to think of the technical strategies that consist of HTML5 and responsive design. I will not talk much about the technical strategy because I don't want to spend more time on this. However, I want you to know what is the difference between e-learning and M-learning. Jadi jangan sampai kalian bisa berpikir bahwa e-learning itu sama dengan M-learning. How could that be different? So we can look at from 4 angles. The first angle is from the purpose. E-learning has the purpose to gain comprehension and retention. However, in M-learning, the students can access the information at the moment it is needed. Jadi mereka bisa akses kapanpun, nggak harus benar-benar paham dan nggak harus benar-benar menyimak. Okay. In terms of medium of delivery, e-learning usually conducted by having the helps of computers and laptop. Tetapi kalau misalnya M-learning itu memang biasanya lebih ke yang on the go atau yang portable. So in this case, you can use smartphones or tablet. The next one is in terms of design. As it has larger screen, so it has static environment. While in M-learning, it has small screens and the learners picking at them while they are on the go. So it's bite-sized modules, one idea per screen, and large buttons and simple navigation. Tetapi kalau yang di e-learning itu akan lebih kompleks grafiknya. In terms of the duration, e-learning take place for 20 to 30 minutes maximum, while the M-learning will occur for about 3 to 10 minutes maximum. So it's clearly different actually, e-learning and M-learning. So how can we improve mobile learning experience? The first one is optimize the multiple devices, not only one single device, but some of them. Why is it important? Because we can see perhaps some features are offered in certain platform or certain tools rather than the other. The second one is social collaboration, so you can engage with other people, even that you people that you don't know, in this mobile learning. The third one is micro learning. Again, I will keep this for tomorrow. I will keep this for the next meeting because this is our next project. Number four is send reminders to your learners. It is important because that's how you communicate with your students, and that's how you need to make sure. That's how you make sure that students are on the right track. Number five, feedback is crucial because the learners need to know how good they have performed. Just imagine if I gave you only the score in your previous project without any comments about what's good and what needs to be improved. So you will think that you don't know how good you have performed in that special task. So that's why feedback is crucial. The next thing to do is that fix cybersecurity loopholes. So if you had a problem with the cybersecurity, you need to make sure it is fixed properly. So I would like to end this presentation by saying a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. So I know it's going to be challenging because after this, I'm going to talk about how the project for the final um, test will be. And yeah, so I'm sure that you can be better students. All right, so I know it's tough, but yeah, you can do that. All right, that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah.